Hey, welcome everyone to Liberty Call. This is Juan, your host, and today we have yet another special guest, and that is John Letaw. I initially got in touch with John through a Facebook group that he created, and it was TRICARE in Thailand. And there he announced that he was writing the first edition of this book, which I have electronically. And of course, when the second edition came out, I had to get this one too, which I also have electronically. I also like to mention that John has a new book. This one right here, The Ultimate Guide to TRICARE. Now, normally it's $22.95, and right now, John, I think it's on sale for $17.49 in Amazon.
Yeah, kind of an end of the year sale going right now.
Yeah. So if I were you, I would jump on it and get it, and get the electronic copy of the book because it's great to have in your phone and always reference. That's what I do myself when I have a question, I want to look at an answer. But John, thank you for making yourself available. I really appreciate it. I know your knowledge and experience is going to be probably a game changer to many veterans who are either intimidated by the TRICARE system or who just don't have a lot of faith in it. So if you don't mind, John, could you please start by introducing yourself and what's your military background and what kind of inspired you to write the book?
Yeah. Juan, thank you for having me on the program. It's great to have a platform like this to reach the veteran community, the retirees all over the world, and have a chance to share. So, in quick background, I'm a retired Navy lieutenant commander. I've been out. I reached that point where I've been out longer than what I was in. So, had a whole second career, and that was very fruitful. And I retired from that as well. And so, basically, I've been using TRICARE forever. It's the only health program I've had in my adult life, and its predecessor, Champus, going way back. I've been on all the different programs, but living overseas, as I did as a retiree, I lived overseas in a SOFA status. That means, as a
Mm.
contractor sponsored by the military community. That's one status, but I've also lived overseas in a non-SOFA status, remote from any military base and totally on my own. And it was in those times when I didn't have any U.S.-based support, I figured my family needs to be self-sufficient. We need to understand our healthcare, how it works. If something really happens, I don't want to be trying to figure it out as we're on the way to the emergency room. I want to get a leg up on it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what inspired me to start my social media. I have a number of Facebook groups, and then later on.
And if you don't mind, how did that inspiration turn into an actual action? Can you walk us to what was going through your mind and saying, "Hey, I'm inspired to write this book. I'm just going to go ahead and take action and get it done." What is it that helped you make that decision to actually
Yeah,
put it in the
yeah,
book?
absolutely. So starting the Facebook group was my first step into this. It's called TRICARE Around the World. We're getting close to 25,000 members, and we do have spin-offs of that, like TRICARE in Thailand, TRICARE in Germany, TRICARE in the Philippines. I have TRICARE for moms and moms to be. And so these kind of drill down into these specialty areas. But it was rather self-serving at the time. We were in a remote location in Japan, way up in the mountains, and the nearest military base, Yokota, was a good 2 hours away.
Oh
And I
yeah.
thought, man, if I get injured, well, we're working up in the woods. I was managing a retreat camp, actually.
Wow.
And if I get hurt, I'm not going to hop in a car and drive 2 hours to go to a military base that may or may not see me. So I need to figure out how to see a Japanese doctor and to get TRICARE to pay for it. And boy, it is confusing. There's like all these different websites. They're linking all over the place. There's no coherence or consistency to it. And so I just started taking notes and getting myself organized and understanding it. But I thought what I need is other families in the same situation who are kind of going through the same thing. At least we can commiserate and maybe actually
Yeah.
educate one another. And so I started a Facebook group, and the genesis of a lot of this was in Space A Facebook groups, that is using military aircraft for global travel. And I was in a lot of these Space A groups, and people in those groups often would say, "Hey, what do you guys use for healthcare when you're traveling? You're flying Space A around. What do you use?" And I knew you could use TRICARE, but I couldn't really explain it to anyone back in then. We're
Yeah.
talking like 2016, 2017.
Okay.
And people would call me a liar, like, right to my face. They'd say, "No, it doesn't work. That's wrong. Stop spreading all this false information." And so I had to just to defend myself, go and learn a little bit about it. And it didn't matter. It didn't matter. However informed and educated I was, I would put out this clear, lucid explanation, but I'm just a random guy on this group of like 80,000 people. Nobody knew me.
Wow.
And I finally realized I don't have any credibility in this group. The only way I'm going to
Mm.
solve it is to start a group of my own. And so all of this kind of converged. I started a group and I thought, at best, I'll find 40 or 50 others that can commiserate and share. And I had 40 people by dinner time that day because they let me post it in the Space A group. And then there was 100. And by the time I woke up, it was like 500 the next morning. And it's like, wow, we're onto something here. Because there was no other group. I couldn't believe it. There
There
was
was
no
nothing.
group.
Yeah, I
Everything is
searched
on
it.
Facebook. You want your Chihuahua group or scrambled eggs group, cat videos, everything is there. It doesn't matter. There was no group at all about
Oh yeah,
TRICARE. There was the official TRICARE presence. They have a page, they're pushing
sure.
information, but there was no group for military people to chat back and forth to each other. And so it was really filling a need. And it took off from there. So, like I said, it was self serving. I hope to educate myself, but it didn't take long, like maybe a week. And we started getting some really tough questions. I remember the first one. It was a lady in Belize. And she said, "Hey, my husband was riding a motorbike and he crashed and knocked his head. Now what do we do?" And well, first, step one, get off of Facebook and get them to the emergency room. And
Right?
two, they'll pay for it. And she says, "Well, how?" And I was right in the process of figuring all this out myself. So I was immediately motivated. This lady has a real need and I've hung my
Wow.
shingle out. I better step up. So within an hour, I had answers, the forums and the websites and the phone numbers and all that kind of stuff. And I started gathering. And that was the first of it, but we get these questions every day now, with a group of this size, all kinds of questions, 24/7. We've got group moderators and admins all over the world. We're covering all time zones very intentionally. So if some emergency pops up, I'm asleep here in the
That's
States,
great.
but someone overseas is awake and we have group experts who'll step up and we're always answering these questions.
That's great. Yeah, I found that really helpful. Nan and I, because our plan is to travel around for some time and then eventually make our way in moving to Thailand once I retire next year, we really didn't know what TRICARE could offer.
Yeah.
And that's what motivated us to start researching. And that's when we found that your group was the only one, like you said, the only
Yeah.
one there that had the veterans talking about TRICARE. So we joined right away, and I'm so glad we did. I learned so much from I think the first time I joined was like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I learned so
You're
much.
one of the first.
Yeah, I learned so much, and I read the comments and I read the responses because every day I learn something new, and it made me realize that TRICARE is a pretty good insurance,
Yeah.
and a lot of people just don't use it because they feel intimidated. So
Yeah.
for someone who wants to travel long term, like me and none, how realistic is it to rely on TRICARE while we're hopping between country to country?
I honestly don't think there's any better program out there. Now, first of all, the cost. If you put yourself on TRICARE Select, which is what we recommend when you're mobile, because Select, you don't need referrals, you don't need the PCM or the primary care manager. You just pick a doctor and you go. So it's very easy to use and very portable. And I think in 2026, the cost will be about $34 a month to cover your family.
Not bad.
Compared to families in the States are paying 1,500 a month just for basic premiums. So there's that. But you literally, and I'll explain this a bit later, literally can go to any doctor that you want. And you don't have to say that they're in TRICARE or they take TRICARE. Those words have no meaning. They're just random words. Well, there's such a thing as an authorized provider. In the States, that has kind of a very specific and strict meaning, obviously that they're medically licensed and all that, but also that they have filed paperwork with TRICARE. Whether they're in network or not, you can see them because they're authorized. Overseas, it has a different meaning. And nowhere on their website do they tell you this, other than if you go on the TRICARE.mil website and you find somewhere they authorized and it has a link and you hover your mouse over the link and you get a little pop-up bubble. That's the only place this is found. The pop-up bubble says authorized for overseas means they're medically licensed.
That's it. That's the only
That's it.
requirement.
And it goes on to say, or other such certification as may be common in that area. So I don't know if
Wow,
they
that's
don't. So it basically,
there's a lot of latitude there.
yeah. So it basically means any hospital, any doctor outside the USA would be authorized. Now, that's different than going in for therapy, like for mental health care. Someone has a certificate. That's different. It has to be a medical license. But then you see them. If they happen to be network or they agree to bill TRICARE directly, that's easy. You give them a copayment and you're done. Most likely you're going to pay the bill up front. And then, as our book teaches you how to submit the claim, turn around, get the claim in, and you'll be reimbursed according to your plan. And then that's it. So that's what thousands of us are doing now. Once you break the code, when I talk about the single biggest secret of TRICARE, it's that word authorized. They really,
Authorized.
really hide the meaning. Like, I'm not going to infer their motivation, but it's almost like they didn't want us to know. And I broke the code. And once I broke the code of what authorized meant, I'm thinking the world needs to know this. You can pretty much go to any doctor you want when you're traveling abroad.
Yeah, that's really helpful to know. That was a question that we had
Mhm.
also. But you were talking about filing claims, right? I've also heard from veterans in this podcast that the reason why they don't use TRICARE is because healthcare is so cheap overseas, like
Mhm.
in
Yeah.
Thailand,
Yeah.
and they just go ahead and pay it, and they just don't want to bother with filing a claim. Now, what is your stance on that?
Okay, I have a couple of thoughts about it. I certainly understand it. It's very easy to get care in places like that. The bill may come out to $15
Yeah.
and you're going to get back 75%. So it's like, why should I? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Number one is practice. Okay,
Ah,
not every bill that you get in the future is going to be $15. You're going to get a bill for $4,000 someday. I guarantee it.
true.
If you're living overseas and you're aging, okay, it's going to happen. So let's practice on the easy stuff. It's low stress, and I get into this in chapter 1 about just starting easy, purposely seeking care, just so you get the privilege of turning in a claim. And you're going to screw it up the first time. It's going to be rejected. Then
Sure.
you come to my group. Why did it get rejected? And you got like $12 at stake here, right? So it's low stress.
Yeah.
And then we walk you through. We ask some leading questions. Did you do this? Did that happen? Whatever. And okay, now I understand. You scanned it wrong. I mean, that can happen. There's a right way to scan. There's a wrong way to scan.
Are you
And
serious?
I am dead
I
serious. It's
didn't know
happening a
that.
lot right now. Yeah,
Oh, wow.
I'll tell
Okay.
you. It's
Good
like
to
in
know.
chapter 9 about, preparing your claim. We talk about settings on your scanner. The book is very thorough. um, so I'll reveal the big secret right now. You need to scan in black and white or grayscale. The
Ah,
system of TRICARE overseas doesn't like color file formats. Now, it often works and it usually works, but sometimes it doesn't. And they tell
mhm.
you don't scan in color. And so it works like 6 times, and the 7th time it doesn't, and that's the big claim all of a sudden. That's Murphy's Law, right? And then it didn't work, and they're not gonna say, "Well, it's because you scanned in color." They won't say that.
Yeah.
Here's what they say: requested information not received. That is their fallback error on almost
Okay.
everything that goes wrong. Requested information not received. I don't remember you guys asking for any information. Well, that's not what it means. It means they couldn't read the document that you sent, and they're not going to go tell you that. They're just going to deny the claim after 90 days, and you're left wondering why.
Mm.
So these little things get you. We present in the book, I think it's like Appendix B, a thorough checklist of everything from TRICARE East, TRICARE West, TRICARE.mil, and TRICARE overseas, and the claim form itself and all the people who process it. We scoured everywhere for all the lessons on what everybody wants in that claim. Turn it into a 10-step checklist, which is like 6 pages. But if you do those things like annotating at the top of pages, and how to scan and all that type of stuff, the type of file formats that you can upload and attach, if you follow those, I give you at least 90%, 95% odds that
I'll
your
take 90%.
claim will be accepted. But it comes with practice. This is finally working back to your question. Why should you submit for a small claim? So it's practice. Let things go wrong in a low stress environment so you know what you're doing on the high stress ones. And then secondly, you got this thing called a deductible, okay, which in the world of insurance means they don't start paying any benefits until you reach a certain threshold. And for TRICARE Select, that threshold is $150. Once you submit claims totaling $150 or more, that's when they start paying it out.
Okay.
So people turn in their very first claim, maybe it's $200. Okay, they turn it in and they get back 30. Hey, what the hell? They're paying me back 15%? Oh,
That's the
why would I
difference,
even
right?
use this? No, out of that 200, 150 satisfied the deductible.
Hmm.
And out of the 50 remaining, they paid back 75%. So you would actually get back a $35, no, 40, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But people misunderstand. They don't really quite know what that deductible is, and they think they're getting scammed. But once that deductible is behind you, it's just once a year. And so on subsequent claims, there's no deductible to satisfy. They just start paying from the very first dollar, giving you back that 75%. So the reason to file those claims is to get that deductible fulfilled. And if you have a series of small claims, it might be a number of them. Usually one or two claims will do it. The deductible's behind you, and now you start getting your money.
There you go. Yeah, that's a good point. Another point, and I learned that also in your book, is that there's an annual catastrophe cap,
Hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
if you keep filing these claims, you're that much closer to that if something were to happen.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, it's a great benefit. That is probably in terms of the financial calculations of TRICARE. People focus on how much is my monthly fee and how much are my co-payments. Okay, they are what they are. But the catastrophic cap is by far the biggest and most important of all the financial calculations. That's the one that saves you from bankruptcy. Okay.
mm,
The others are annoying. $150 deductible, $35 a month to cover my family. Okay, whatever. I
yeah.
won't go to Starbucks twice and it's covered, you know. But the catastrophic cap, that's what saves your house. Because if you have bills of $100,000, soon as you reach like 3,000 out of pocket, which would be for someone on TRICARE for life, or it's maybe 4,200 or so in
42.
2026 for people on select. Once
Hmm.
you reach that much out of pocket, you have no more co-payments for the rest of the
Yeah.
year. And that's not just you, that's your whole family. So you, the wife, and the kid, each of you are having little co-payments, plus the deductibles that you paid, plus the monthly fees that you paid. You bundle all that into a bucket. When that reaches the amount of your cap, all your payments stop and you
Yeah.
get back 100% of it. So that catastrophic cap is very underappreciated. Contrast again, civilian plans may have a cap of 20,000, 30,000, whatever you're going to keep paying. Some of them, their deductible is that much. You
Yeah.
don't get any benefits until you've paid 15,000.
In
That's the
comparison,
bronze
there's no
plans.
comparison. There's
No,
no
no, not at all.
comparison. Nothing out there compares to TRICARE.
Our deductible $150. It is very normal. People don't want a high bill, so they go with that bronze plan on the marketplace.
Yeah.
And the reason the bronze plan is cheaper is because the deductible is like $18,000 and you don't get any benefits until you've paid $18,000 out of pocket,
Right.
plus your $1,500 per month premium for the benefit of buying the plan. So
Yeah.
no comparison whatsoever. When the TRICARE is absolutely the best deal out there.
Yeah. I told Nan, worst case scenario, every year we would pay, I think when you add up everything, the fees and uh, catastrophe cap, $4,800. Worst
That's
case scenario.
absolute worst case,
Yeah.
and probably shouldn't have even have been that much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is, when you think about it, that's unbelievable. That's like
Mhm.
4 months on a regular family here in
Yeah.
the US.
Yeah, I embarked on an experiment on this. I've done this I call myself the TRICARE guy, and I have this Facebook persona.
Yeah.
Ever since I became the TRICARE guy, he
That's what I
started.
call you.
Yeah, why not? I haven't really played that up much, but anyway, there it is. I experiment, and I set out in 2020, I think it was. I said I want to pay as much as I can for healthcare, and I announced this in the Thailand group publicly at the beginning of the year. And of course, everyone said I'm nuts. But the point was, I want to reach my cap and see what happens. Because my strategy until then, as I was learning, was to avoid healthcare as much as possible because it was such
Mm,
a pain in the butt to figure out the claims. By 2020, I'd figured out the claims. It wasn't that bad. I can do a claim in like 20 minutes and turn it in. I do it all electronic. I don't have to print. I don't have to scan. I do it on my iPhone and my MacBook. So I'm good at the claims, and that didn't scare me anymore. So I flipped the thinking. Rather than avoiding healthcare, let's embrace it, get everything we need. So I did a new sleep study. I got into dermatology care. I was getting the mental health
I
care.
remember those posts.
Yeah,
Yeah, I remember that
yeah.
now. Now
Yeah, you
you're
remember
right.
that. And I was talking to the people in the Thailand group. That's kind of a more cohesive community, about 200 grumpy old vets, right? As opposed to this 25,000 very diverse community in my larger group. So I'm chatting with these guys, but yeah, sure enough. And my payoff at the end was I wanted lens implants. And my eyes, they replaced with artificial lens. And I thought, well, if I reach my cap and I go in to do that, it's going to be free. And I want to
That's
test the
true.
system and see. I got a new CPAP. I did all this stuff early in the year. And but what hit in 2020, especially in Thailand, we had COVID.
COVID.
So it became hard. I mean, people didn't want you coming into clinics, and I was doing all kinds of stuff that got delayed and whatever. But we got there, and all of this was care that I genuinely needed. It was just like in Japan, I wouldn't have sought mental health counseling. It just seemed like a bad fit. But I found a Western doctor license in Thailand, and we did that. And I was learning more and more about claims for all these types of things, and it worked great. So it came around Thanksgiving. I'd reached my cap. I had already had a first consult with an eye doctor. He's in Pattaya, a coastal city there in Thailand.
Yeah.
They run a clinic. It's called the Bangkok Hospital in Pattaya. Runs
Yeah.
a
I know where
clinic
that is. Hey?
for Supersight, which is their brand name, their trademark name for lens implants. And he
Wow.
says, "Yeah, we'll do it." And we do direct billing. We do direct billing to
Oh,
TRICARE.
that's
We'll just
perfect.
charge your copayment. They were smart enough. They said they'll charge the copayment. They pick up, they call the TRICARE office in Singapore. They have the ID card copy, and they realized I'd reached my cap, and so my copayment is zero. And they did it. They did all of that.
That's
I ended up
great.
paying like $150 because I wanted upgraded lenses because the TRICARE benefit, you get a monofocal lens, but there's,
Okay.
little fancier ones. So I got the fancier one for 150. That upgrade I've heard in the States is like $2,000. And I
Wow.
honestly don't know why it's so cheap because it's like a Swiss brand. So I don't know why it's
Huh.
cheaper in Thailand, but it was.
Yeah. That's weird.
Um, and then it came the time, this is like if my experiment goes wrong, they're going to bill me $20,000. And I had a lot at stake here, trusting the system that it's really going to work.
Wow.
Never got a bill. And
That's
it
amazing.
just went through, and I can see. So life is good, man.
Oh,
This
wow.
stuff
So, I
works.
mean, if you tried it, if you're listening to this, hey, the TRICARE guy try it and it
Yeah.
works. So that's amazing. It really, really is. I try to compare the best healthcare
Mm.
coverage anywhere. And another thing that people shy about is I didn't know this until I joined your group. It was that you can also get reimbursement for medicine
Yeah.
while you're traveling overseas. And a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah. Use the same claim form. There's just a
Yeah.
box to check that this was a pharmacy claim. I've actually never done it. Now I'm falling into my own trap because my meds in Thailand were so cheap. If I
They
got
are.
them, if I went to see the doctor because I was sick, he would say, "Get your meds on the way out," and it's all on the hospital bill, and it's easy. But the things for like cholesterol, I pick up a refill every 90 days. It's $10 without insurance for 90 days. So I probably should have, so I would be better advised. But I wasn't claiming those, but it was extremely easy. What you do need to watch out, and this is the big precaution. Obviously, you want genuine drugs. So if you're in a third
Right.
world nation, go to the corner drugstore. Who knows where these medications come from and are they genuine? So I asked my doctor about that. They always say, "Ask your doctor." Well, I did. I said, "I'm
Yes.
going to the corner drugstore." It's a chain. It was a major chain around Thailand. But the hospital pharmacy was easily 4 times the price of going out in town.
Okay.
Now, the hospital, it's going to be genuine medication, and out in town, you're taking a risk. But actually, a couple doctors said, "No, go there. They're legit." I think it
Well,
was Boots. Boots is what it's called. It's an Asian chain. So I was quite happy with that.
and I know there are some countries that are more friendly than others when it comes to TRICARE. Which countries would you say that are the friendliest for veterans that are using TRICARE overseas?
That's tough. My travel has been in Asia. So obviously around military concentrations, if you are in the Kanto area of Japan, there's
Yeah.
Yokosuka, there's Yokota. Some doctors will know about TRICARE. Though there is some animosity going, there's some cultural issues with Americans seeking care off base in Japan. The issue being that we overwhelm the facilities and block out Japanese from using the facilities. So
Yeah.
there's some pushback there. Germany has fleet, major concentrations. And then if you're around Rhoda, Spain, or places
Right.
of Italy, that you may find the doctors near those military areas are familiar with TRICARE. They might be network, but more likely they might agree for direct billing. That means they're non-network, but they will figure it all out, send the bill to TRICARE, and charge you just a copayment. You don't have to do a claim. You not only don't have to do a claim, you don't have to pay the whole thing up front and wait for the money back. You pay your share, and you're not waiting for any money back. So that's kind of nice. But beyond that, in Thailand, there are a lot of retirees there. And I
Hmm.
have personal experience. So there are a lot of hospitals that are either in network or agree to direct bill. Now, I mentioned the Bangkok Hospital of Pattaya. That's a
Yes.
major chain of really capable hospitals in Thailand. If I had to guess, there's like 15 to 20 of these around Thailand. And recently, there's one individual, he's in our group. He's one of the only non retirees that I let in the group. He is a Thai national who works in the Thai healthcare system, and he's a big believer in TRICARE. And so he's been lobbying all
Nice.
these branches of the Bangkok hospital to please support these military families.
That's
They're great
amazing.
customers. You're going to build your business base,
That's great.
do direct billing. And he has lobbied quite successfully for us. And he's also helped cut through some red tape. So that one is just tremendous. It used to be like 2 or 3 hospitals pretty much in Bangkok. And now there's like maybe 15. Um,
I think I remember about 15 years ago or so, it was just Bumbugrad in Bangkok.
yeah.
That was the only one.
Yeah.
And just in the last few years is when Bangkok Hospital has been taking direct billing. So that's thanks to you then, to your group.
No, I won't take credit for that. This Thai individual was introduced by the group by another retiree who had already been lobbying for it. So by the time he joined our group, he was already kind of on this movement, and we armed him with
That's
the
great.
information. I fed him some business logic about what would it mean to a hospital. You get foreigners
Yeah.
coming in, getting all their care there. We're good for the bills. Some places we'll have dual billing, like one price for the local nationals and another price for people from Western nations. I don't know if Bangkok Hospital does that or not, but we're
Yeah.
still a good, strong customer base. And so it's a business decision if they want to do that. And others can lobby likewise. If you're in Panama, you're in Mexico, and you have a military community around there, lobby that local hospital. They do not have to do the paperwork to become in network. That's kind of a big deal for them.
Mhm.
But to agree to direct billing, that's simply a business decision they can make, which means basically they agree when you're seen, they'll call the regional contractor. The TRICARE overseas has regional offices around the world. They'll call, verify that you're covered, figure out what your co-payments are, charge you those co-payments up front, and send the rest of the bill to TRICARE. And if they're willing to take that risk, it's so much easier for the rest of us. You don't have to front
Mhm.
that big bill. If you're going in
Yeah.
for new hip or knees or whatever it is, that's really huge and not have to front that bill up front.
Yeah. And that can be quite a lot of money depending on where you are. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, we do see people independently going and asking hospitals, if you approach them in the right, you got to dress up nice, make a good impression, bring some statistics of what the military retiree population is around there. They may be unaware, and your benefits, they don't know. TRICARE doesn't want to say this in writing, but there is no limit on your annual benefits. There's no bill so big that they're going to
Yeah.
refuse to pay as long as it's medically necessary. So it's not uncommon for different policies around the world. You're covered up to a certain amount and then it
Right.
stops. No. So I don't know that you'll find that in writing, but people have said, hey, I had $1 million of cancer treatment last year and it was all
Wow.
paid. So you make a business case to this hospital and say, man, yeah, we're willing to give it a try.
Yeah, that's a great point. And
Mm.
and for someone that's retiring soon, like me, I'm
Mhm.
retiring in the next year.
Yeah.
What is the first tracker decision that we really need
Mm.
to get right from the beginning?
Yeah, that's interesting. Because of my role as the TRICARE guy, I join a lot of groups that I wouldn't otherwise be in because I want to get kind of this sense of the population.
Yeah.
And one group that I'm in deals with military people who are about to get out, like you're in your last final years of service and working through these transition issues. I'm a big believer in TAP, that transition assistance plan training, because I used to teach that. I taught that in
Oh, did
Japan.
you?
Yeah, I was the regional director of it. And
I
so,
just did mine like a couple of
yeah,
weeks ago.
yeah, TAP's a great program, but it hits a lot, at least when I was doing it, hit a lot on veterans benefits, VA benefits, but not so much on TRICARE. They kind of just scratched the surface a little
Yeah.
and didn't drill down because most people getting out are not retiring. People get out short of retirement. So at any rate, so what I see in this group of people who are about to retire is a whole lot because you're so busy. Where are we going to live? Let's find a
Yeah.
job. So you got all this stuff going on. The last thing you're thinking of is how does my healthcare plan transition? You don't think about it. And so it comes up like in the final week. And it's usually the military spouse is the one asking the question, like, do we have to do something? Are we going to have health care? And then they'll ask this, how do we sign up for TRICARE for life? Because they think that's the plan that retirees go on to.
Mm,
Now, not to
yeah.
demean anyone, but if you're thinking that TRICARE for life is what you get when you're on Medicare, which
Right.
normally comes at 65. But if you're retiring at like 40, 45, whatever, you've got 20 some years before you're going to be on TRICARE for life.
Yeah.
And you're going to have different plans in the meantime, which is usually Prime and Select. And there's a few other options. But at any rate, they don't think about it till the last minute. So really, I would say it's easy. There's a couple of things you got to do. You got to get your status updated in DEERS that the sponsor is retired. Okay, that's the key thing. And then once that's done, you can all go in for new ID cards.
Okay.
Ideally, this would happen day before retirement, a day after retirement. Not everyone is that efficient and things fall through the cracks. It could
Yeah.
happen weeks later. It does sometimes. So you're covered. You're covered retroactively. You've got basically 90 days to sort it all out without any complications. And
That's
even if
good.
you did have complications, they can extend that 90-day even longer. And I don't
I didn't
think
know that.
yeah.
Good to
Not
know.
that you want to do that. That's not the
Sure.
default. You want to get that ID card. I've been out for a while, but some people say you can get the retiree ID card before the actual retirement date and certainly, on or a couple days later. But, you'd be talking to the pass office, the DEERS office, and getting all that sorted out. So that's the main thing. DEERS updated, get the ID card. You will have
Okay.
to choose a plan. So there's the confusion. Basically, it's going to be Prime or Select. I will mention just for completeness, there's something called the U.S. Family Health Plan, USFHP. It's kind of like Prime. It's in the
Okay.
States. It's only offered in certain geographic locations, and it's centered around the capabilities of a single
Oh.
large provider. So there's one in the Pacific Northwest. You cover the Seattle area all the way to Idaho, even in California. There's
Oh,
one
okay.
centered around Boston and New England, one in Texas. So you just look for USFHP. I think it's .com. Maybe .mil, but I think it's .com, and you'll see if there's one. It runs kind of like Prime, but you're more or less within their network of this major hospital for their regional
Okay.
hospital. So anyway, what I see in military families, they more or less default to Prime because most of them, that's what they're used to.
Yeah.
They go to the military hospital, the MTF, right, a military treatment facility.
Mm-hmm.
They go there, they see the doctor, never have a claim. If they're referred off base, it's all managed. They're told where to go. There's never a claim, and they're used to it. The problem is Prime only works and is only offered if you are more or less near a military hospital, like
Right.
100, 150 miles. So they have what they call Prime service areas. So you can go to the Find a Plan tool, which is at TRICARE.mil. Up at the top, you click Find a Plan, put in the zip code where you're going to retire to if you've chosen your home. And then your status, you say the sponsor is retired. You're kind of role playing here because you're not yet retired, but you can
Right.
do this for planning. And it will tell you if Prime is offered there. And if it's not, you better go with Select. I see people pushing it. This comes up in our group all the time. This is a really valuable lesson. Oh, we want Prime. We want Prime. We're used to it.
Yeah.
But you're like 200 miles away. Yeah, but we like Prime. Every cough you have is 200 miles. All right. And they give
Yeah.
you a referral. That's going to be 200
100
miles.
miles.
And there won't be any Prime providers around you because no one else is in Prime. Why should they bother?
Right.
So you're in this like desert when everyone around you would take Select if you would just wake up.
Give it a
Right.
try.
So yeah. And we see people trying this all the time. Was there one around Red Bluff? It's way north California. This is like this prime desert. And then they're bemoaning, I can't find care. Nobody takes it. And we realize, what plan are you on? Well, I'm on Prime. What the hell? You're like 500 miles from any hospital. Stop
You
doing
need to go
that.
to San Diego then.
Well, but they let me put in a waiver. They put in this geographic distance waiver. Yeah, you know why they had the waiver? They were warning you this is a bad idea, but
Yeah.
if you really want to do it. So I really come down hard now. I see people pretty regularly going in that direction. Try to be in
Yeah.
Prime when it's not offered. It's not near an MTF. And I dump on them pretty hard because they're setting themselves up for failure and they don't
Yeah.
know it. And the other aspect is you're not walking in anymore as a Navy chief or a sergeant, whatever. You're walking in as
Yeah.
retiree Jones.
Yeah.
And I hate to say it, but you don't carry the weight that you used to do, or you are the wife of retiree Jones or whatever, and you don't want to be a lesser citizen in this area.
Yeah.
So if Prime is not offered, just look to Select. So that's my big lesson for those who are transitioning. I really need to wake up and understand that.
That's some great advice, definitely. And talking about TRICARE Select, right? That's great if you live in the U.S., but but you can still use TRICARE Select if you're traveling just temporarily, right? And you
Mhm.
technically legally live in the U.S., but you're traveling for a few months and coming back, you can still use Select. But at
Mhm.
some point, if you are leaving the country to permanently live somewhere, you got to transition to TRICARE Overseas, correct?
Wrong.
Wrong. Okay.
Wrong. Yeah,
All
and that's
right.
very common, very common.
I didn't know
Okay.
that.
Yeah. So everybody in TRICARE has 2 things. They have the region they're in and the plan that they're on. Okay, region and plan. There are only 3 regions in the entire world. There's TRICARE East, TRICARE West, and TRICARE Overseas, which is anything outside of the US and the territories is TRICARE
Right.
Overseas. So that's just your region. That's the contractor who's managing your claims. Okay, but then
Oh.
you still have to pick a plan, and your plan would be Select. So you will be in TRICARE Select
Oh,
overseas.
I
Okay.
understand. I thought TRICARE Overseas was a different plan this whole time, and
No,
it's just a
everybody
different
thinks that.
region.
Yeah.
I understand
Yeah.
it now. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Yeah.
So that makes it easy. That's one more reason to move out of Prime. Prime has a way of operating, which basically means if you get sick, you got to go see your PCM, your primary care doctor. They'll either take care of you or give you a referral. Correct. They don't give you a referral. They send the referral to TRICARE, who mulls it over and chomps on it and does whatever they do. And then someone
Yeah.
calls you and says, okay, we have your referral. And that could take days, it could take weeks. And then that's where you go. That's Prime. Select, you don't have a PCM. You want a doctor, you just, go on Google Maps and find a doctor, whatever it is, you go to the doctor and there's
And
no
you can go to the
referrals.
specialist directly.
You can. Now, no referrals through TRICARE. Now, if you want to go to an orthopedic specialist, a lot of them want a referral from from your family doctor. I don't want to say PCM because I view that as a prime term.
Right.
But say you have like a family doctor that you visit and, hey, I got a bad sprain or I got whatever. I thought I had, what's that shoulder injury? Rotator cuff.
A rotary cuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I gotta see an orthopedic specialist. Well, orthopedic specialists are busy, they're way booked up, and they don't want some knucklehead walking in that doesn't have an orthopedic problem. So what they're gonna say is, "Get a referral from your doctor, and when they tell
Okay.
me that you need to see me, then I'll see you." But the big difference between Prime and Select is your doctor is not sending the referral to TRICARE, they send it to the orthopedic doctor that you told them you wanna see. They'll have it within the hour.
Nice.
I've had referrals approved in an hour. I
Wow.
called, what did I have? I had back pain. I had a regular doctor. I was living in Hawaii. I said, this thing is back. It's been like a year, but my back pain is back. She says, well, do you want to go in for physical therapy? Yeah. She goes, I'll take care of it. 15 minutes later, I'm driving around. I get a call from the physical therapist. We had an opening today if you can make it.
That doesn't happen here
Wow.
on base, you know that, right?
Yeah. That won't happen with Prime. You go see the doctor, he
Weeks.
sends a referral to TRICARE, they mull it over, they send it over, you're in the spec meeting. We have an actual case study, and I got my own copy. A case study from one of our group members. I have a chapter on selecting your plans, and she had posted this personal experience between Prime and I'll find exactly what chapter it's in. Her daughter was in gymnastics and had a leg injury, and her daughter's friend was in gymnastics and she had a leg injury, like on the same day, and one was on Prime and one was on Select. So after like
Oh,
45 days, the one in Select had gone through the whole course of treatment, the x-rays,
wow.
MRIs, physical therapy. She was back on the balance beam. The other one of 45 days had just gotten all the referrals managed and was just beginning her physical therapy. That was the one on Prime. And such a contrast. And so I got her for me to say, can I put your story in my book? Because I have a chapter on choosing plans. And to me, that's not a matter of cost. It's a matter of process. Blind one is very structured.
What a
And what
difference.
a yeah,
I like the flexibility of picking who you want and in which you get the care. I think
yeah.
that's it's worth the co-pays in my opinion.
I say overseas is even easier because most of them have a more robust healthcare system than the United States. Like specialists in the US, they're just understaffed, they're booked up. I
Yeah.
needed to see like audiologists, they were 3 and 4 months out. Okay.
Wow.
In Thailand, never had to wait more than 24 hours for any kind of specialist and often walk in. Like I would go to Bangkok Hospital in Hua Hin, which is where I was living, and he'd say, well, you need to see an orthopedist. And I went downstairs and walked in. That was
Right there.
normal. And so, but that was all on Select and no referrals. And it's just very, very streamlined. So that should be the decision point. With Select, you got to choose a doctor, and people find that scary. They don't know how. With
Hmm.
Prime, they'll figure it out and tell you where you can go for good, reputable care. It's all managed for you, and some people are comfortable with that. That's the choices that you make.
Select is definitely the way to go. So there's really no difference between TRICARE Select using, excuse me, let me use the right terminology now that you educated me. There's no difference between using TRICARE Select in the States and using TRICARE Select overseas. There's same process, same coverage, same everything, right?
Yeah, same process, same coverage, same cost. Remember, you have a 25% cost share if you're non-network, which overseas normally non-network. Well, in the States, you see a specialist, your 25% very easily is going to be $500, right? You
Right.
see a specialist overseas, your 25% share may be,
$5.
$28. Yeah, it could well be. It's back to that level again. You say, why should I even turn in a claim?
Right.
But yeah, but otherwise, the math all works out and it's all the same. And I'll say that overseas, except in exceptional situations, very, very hard to reach your cap, because every time you go in is just so darn cheap. And the cap only counts for what you pay out of pocket, not for the part that TRICARE's covering. So to
Yeah.
reach like $4,200 in out of pocket expenses in most countries is really hard unless you got something made.
Yeah, definitely. But I think there might be. I'm confident there's an exception to that because I read it in your book, and that is, and I'm not familiar with it, but it is the Philippines. The
Mm.
Philippines is a different process, right, or different coverage.
The Philippines, yeah. And I'll just preface by saying Chapter 9, TRICARE in the Philippines. And we have a special group, TRICARE in the Philippines, because they do have a different process, different terminology, and different rules. Regrettably, this was came about because of the prevalence of fraud in the Philippines,
Um,
that either doctors were fraudulently billing or they would actually collaborate with a patient, with a TRICARE beneficiary, and say, hey, man, let's just turn this in. You'll get your copayment back and I'll get all this, and everyone's making money. And it became like a really big thing. So it just takes a while before TRICARE figures that out and they ramp it down, and they basically made TRICARE for a while impossible to use in the Philippines. And then they rolled out a series of very special rules and certifications. So the Philippines now has two terms that aren't used anywhere else. And one is a certified provider and the other is a preferred provider. So
okay.
preferred will do the direct billing to TRICARE, but I think you still end up paying 25%. It's not like you have the flat rate, $50 for a specialist is
Okay.
25%. And then certified, you're allowed to see them, but you got to pay the whole thing up front and turn in your own claim and get the money back. When I started doing this, the TRICARE guy stuff, there were certified providers pretty much in every province of the Philippines. But that has actually been diminishing, and we are finding entire provinces that don't have a
Yeah.
single certified provider. Okay. I get greatly troubled because I see indications of this starting to happen in Panama. That I see people talk about fraud and doctors that are misbilling and things like that. I warn them, turn them in. Turn them in. You do not want to become the next Philippines and get subject to these rules that really, really makes it hard to use. It's worse than that in the Philippines. You may find a certified hospital and you go there,
Hmm.
but alas, the doctor was not certified and you didn't
Wow.
think to ask. Or the doctor was certified, but the anesthesiologist was not. It's the kind of problem you used to face in the States with, you have a network provider, but they slip in a non-network when you weren't looking.
Yeah.
So it's like that, but worse, because it ends up with all your
Mm.
entire claim being disallowed. It's a really big problem. So people are successfully using TRICARE in the Philippines, but they're more motivated not to. And you've got to get really good at it, ask a lot of questions, and there's a lot of concern. If I have a big bill, is it going to be paid or not? It's very tough to use.
I'm glad I brought that up. There are a lot of vets in the Philippines, and
Yeah,
it's crazy that they're having such a big problem just getting their claim resolved.
yeah,
But you talk in your book and everything, and earlier you talked about mistakes that can wipe out all your savings, right?
yeah.
What is it, and why do travelers and expats fall into this more often?
Well, it's not necessarily an expat thing, but you think about the bad old days in America that medical billing was the number one cause of personal bankruptcy in America for the
Mm.
longest time. All kinds of shenanigans. The pre-existing conditions was a big one.
Yeah.
You'd go in for, heart condition, and then they would say, well, you had an undiagnosed pre-existing condition that nobody knew about, but it
Wow.
became evident when you had your heart attack, and they would deny you, and you just had a $250,000 bill that no one's going to pay. And that
So
was the
sad.
battle. That doesn't happen anymore if you have reputable coverage. Um, so, but overseas, the only thing that can go wrong is if you are in TRICARE, but you don't pick a plan. And this can happen when you retire. You fail to choose a plan. It happens for other reasons, like you're enrolled, but if you stop paying for some reason and they send you warnings, but you
Oh,
didn't keep DEERS updated, and you're not getting the
that happened to a friend of
notifications.
mine.
Yeah. So eventually you fall out of the system and you revert to what they call DCO, which means direct care only. That's what
Oh,
you won't want to be. And I think you were going to also ask about the one status you don't want to be,
yes.
direct care only. What that means is, yeah, you're in TRICARE, but if you want care, you got to find an MTF and go there. Well, you're not going to do that in Mexico. We don't have U.S. military hospitals there, in Thailand and whatever, all these places. So, and not only that, when you're in DCO, you're kind of on a space A basis. So they'd probably see you in ER to stabilize you, but they're not going to treat
Yeah.
you per se. But you're space A in the clinics, and who has ever seen an MTF with space available? It just doesn't happen. They don't have space for some random retiree that forgot to sign up a plan. They don't have time for you. So they're going to say, see a civilian doctor. Well, TRICARE won't pay. Hey, buddy, you should have thought about that like a year
Yeah.
ago, man. So don't fall into DCO because your bills just won't be paid. And that is very easy. You pick up the phone. If you're overseas, you call TRICARE overseas. They have an office, I think, in Wisconsin, and they got regional offices, one in the UK and one in Singapore, and they'll sign you up. We're in enrollment period. I don't know when your podcast will hit the streets, but
Yeah.
annual
It'll be
enrollment ends
past
in
that
about 4
already.
days. In about 4 days. It comes up every fall, November, December is your annual enrollment period. But there are things called QLEs, which is a qualifying life event.
Uh,
Something certain happens in your life allows you to sign up a plan outside of the normal annual time. So such QLEs, you get married, you get divorced, you have a baby, even someone in your family turns 65 because they shift to Medicare,
okay.
you lose employer insurance, or you move to a new zip code. All
I
of these
didn't know that
things,
a move would trigger that.
it does. And these things only have to happen to one member of the family. Like I say, one person turns 65 or someone loses employer coverage. That triggers QLE for everybody in the family. And all of you can change plans. Anyway, what I'm saying is if you find yourself in a DCO situation, call your regional contractor, figure out what's your status, what are your options. They'll say, well, you got to move. And then you're usually, okay, I can do that. But I mean, we're all globally mobile, right?
Yeah.
So, um, something happened, something sneaky. It was in my book, I forget the year, maybe 2018, 2021, because I was just flipping through the book. 21. Prime for retirees, Prime had a monthly fee, but Select did not. There was no monthly fee for retirees in Select. And then they said,
Yeah.
hey, you know what we need to do? We need to start charging a monthly fee. And
Mm,
so this massive campaign with letters and emails and newsletters, all this stuff went out telling the retiree all over the world, the community everywhere, you need to contact us and set up for your monthly payment. And obviously, that 10% didn't get the word because they didn't keep DEERS updated and
yeah.
they were not being contacted. They didn't get the word. So the fees started and they don't pay in 1 month and 2 months and 3 months, and then they got dropped out. And then they put in like, kind of a grace zone of about 6 months or whatever to let you back in. You make all your back payments and then you're covered. But
Mm,
that ran out. And even then some people didn't get the word. So here we are like a year later in 2022, and they go in for care and it's denied. What
right.
happened? Well, man, you had a whole year. Plus a year before that when they were telling everybody where you've been, that for 2 years you weren't paying attention. You're not paying your fee and you got to wait for the annual enrollment program plan, which, shows up 6 months from now to sign up. So all
Right.
those people ended up DCO. So these things can happen. They pop up unexpectedly. If you look at your bank statement, your monthly fees coming out, you can pay by credit card, retiree check, or by direct bank transfer. Say if it just randomly stops for some reason, you better investigate and
That's
find
what
out
happened to
what's
that friend
going
of
on.
mine.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he when he retired, he set up his payments through his ATM card, and eventually that ATM card expired. He learned his lesson. It's like, hey, he told me, when you retire, set up an allotment from your retirement account straight
Yeah.
into it, so you never ever have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had an injury, pretty bad injury, outside my house,
Oh
with his
goodness.
knee, and it took him. He went to the MTF because that TRICARE told him, "Hey, sorry, you're not covered anymore."
Oh
And
man.
MTF just kept pushing, pushing, pushing for months. Eventually, I don't know exactly how he ended up getting care, but I do know that when enrollment period came back up, he was able to get back into his plan. But
Yeah.
what a lesson learned on that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you just don't need those complications. There is something we talk about in our book. There's a chapter on signing up and all the different ways you can do it. And there is something we mentioned there, which is called ETP, exception to policy, which is please allow me to change plans outside of the regular cycle for these compassionate reasons. And you really got to make a case. You got to find someone on the phone who's willing to listen,
Yeah.
and you can tell when someone's stonewalling you, just hang up, call back, you get a different person. I'll tell you where this comes up a lot. It's women in Germany, whether they're active duty spouse or retiree spouse, and they get pregnant. A lot of them would rather go on select because they can choose doula care, which is kind of like midwife care, out on the economy in Germany, which is a rather common thing there. But they're on prime because they're active duty spouse, and prime won't allow that, or it's very difficult. So they want to change to select mid-year to get the prenatal care that they want and for delivery. And so a lot of them have tried the exception to policy route, and it seems like that works. You find someone compassionate that's all they got to do is click the button. You get them click that button, and they'll be yes, but you got to
Nowadays, you
get
can
through.
use Gemini AI to help you build your case, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. What Juan is talking about, we had a conversation in my Facebook group about using AI to help with TRICARE decisions. And I used it very successfully because I just got trained on Gemini, which is like ChatGPT, but it's offered by Google, to evaluate all of our Fed VIP dental plans versus the care that I know my family's going to need in the coming year. Because we just saw a doctor in December. We all three saw dentists. He said, you can need this and this and this. I plug that into Gemini. Here's the Fed VIP website. Which plan is most advantageous? And it did the math, created a table. So we end up with that GEHA, I don't know how you say GEHA. Will end up saving us thousands of dollars next year.
That's amazing. I really think
Yeah,
AI is really going to help vets, even for things like this,
you
trying to
can.
figure out which one is the best plans, writing different scenarios, or even helping write a narrative on a compelling argument for an exception to policy.
Yeah, yeah. That's a little off topic. Not that I really endorse AI, but I went, as I said in my Facebook group, I just went through training with Google. They had a special veterans training session. I got in for 2 full days on Gemini, and I learned enough to be dangerous. But the whole trick is learn to write this query that gets Gemini analyzing the right data, anticipating it's going to make mistakes. And sure enough, it came up with some wrong numbers from the benefit site, and I had to feed in the right numbers, and then it did the correct analysis. So not that I'm advising anyone to do that, but it worked for me. Yeah.
I love it. I love AI. Yeah, so definitely, I will be using it. But earlier you mentioned that some retirees believe that once they retire, they go to TRICARE for life. When that's really not the case.
Right.
It's not until they turn 62. But a lot of
65.
I'm sorry, 65. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Social Security. I was thinking. I'm
So
sorry.
62 can begin Social Security. Yeah.
With Tracker for Life, but there are a lot of retirees who the ones that live overseas that are that age or even older than that also find confusion when it
Mm,
comes to Tricare for Life. What do you think is the
mm.
biggest misconception when it comes to retirees and that
Well, I referred earlier to this grumpy old group of retirees in
in
Thailand.
Thailand?
Yeah, these guys all set in their ways, and we're all grumpy, get together and drink and complain about the bad old days. All right. But a big gripe that I hear coming from there and other other locations. Remember, if you're on TRICARE for life because you're on Medicare, and Medicare has a fee for the Part B, the fee in 2026, I think, is going to be $205. So here's the question. Grumpy old person overseas, why should I be paying $205 a month for Medicare when I can't even use Medicare overseas? Because you can't use it outside the state.
Right.
You can use it in the territories like Puerto Rico and now you can use it even though that's a TRICARE overseas area, but has Medicare. Okay, but you're in Asia, you're in Europe or South America. So what I tell them is you're not paying $205 for a plan that you can't use. You're paying $205 to keep your TRICARE benefits, your TRICARE for life, so that as long as you keep paying, you have TRICARE for life. And furthermore, if you ever set foot on a plane and land in the States, the instant you're in the States, you have full coverage with Medicare and TRICARE, which means zero cost for any kind of treatment whatsoever. Because that combination in the States is just amazing.
Yeah.
You will never pay a penny. Maybe some really extraordinary situation where you did something wrong, you might. But by and large, the people on Medicare and TRICARE for life don't pay a single penny as long as they stay enrolled in Medicare. Okay. But in overseas, you can't use Medicare. So your TRICARE for life becomes the first payer. And it works pretty much just like Select in that case. You
Okay.
pay up front, you get back 75%. Or you find a direct biller, you just pay your copayment of 25% and you don't have to put in a claim. It's really very much like Select, except a lower catastrophic cap. And you're on TRICARE for life, your cap is at $3,000 rather than $4,200.
Nice. I didn't know that. I didn't know there was a difference.
So that's me now. I am on Medicare now. And that helped writing the new edition of my book. I had the experience of going through that transition and getting it set up and using those plans. So they work really, really good. So it gets worse than that, actually. So you're paying $205. You can't use Medicare overseas, but you have TRICARE for life. We've already established what a great program that is. And if you fail to pay and you drop out and you buy back in at a future time, you've incurred a penalty for not being on Medicare continuously. The penalty is a 10% increase in your monthly fee for every year you were out. So if you're out for a year, you're paying 10% more. If you're out for 3 years, you're paying 30% higher than you would otherwise have been paying. That penalty is forever. It never goes away.
That can
So
get
that really
expensive.
encourages continuous enrollment, but unbroken service, as they might say, just keep that in place all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Well worth it. Because I think paying that penalty for the rest of your life could compound and definitely skyrocket your overall payments.
Yeah, we look at some case studies in the book. We talk about, usually it's old timers, they're the ones dealing with these questions. They say, I'm not going to pay that. So they find a local plan, like in Philippines, there are local health plans, in Thailand and everywhere. And the cost is reasonable. It's kind of aimed at the local cost of care, which is much cheaper than American health care. And so the plans are affordable. The problem, at least in Thailand and a lot of countries, they will cut you off at a certain age because they have their own Medicare program for their own citizens,
Yeah.
right?
Good
They don't want
point.
people,
Yeah.
they don't want you being 80 years old on this commercial
Yeah.
plan. So when you hit 70 or so, they cut you off. Well, guess what? Now you've been out of Medicare for 5 years. Say, well, I can't buy locally. I'll go back to Medicare. That 205 that we said, now it's 307 because it's 50% higher for those 5 years you were out. And so if you were complaining before, by the way, it's 307 plus inflation for the last 5 years.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Is going up every year. So now you're paying $400 for a plan that you were complaining at 205 about. So there's no good alternative. You got to bite the bullet. If you're planning to retire, you should be making a retirement financial plan and forecasting.
Yeah.
This is also something that I do in my spare time, looking at what are my finances going to be, through the end of my life, and for my spouse, if you're planning for that. You need to factor in that Medicare Part B fee for the rest of your life. So it's there, it's covered, you can afford it, and then you got all your other money for other stuff.
That's a great point. I think where people get sucked into TRICARE for life is by purchasing supplemental, what is that? Supplemental coverage.
Yeah.
Where really that's not reading your book and talking and chatting on the page. That's not needed. In fact, it's going to cost you more, right?
In the States, absolutely. Because what is TRICARE for life when you live in the States? Military people may not be aware of this. I said I joined Facebook groups that are not appropriate for me so I can learn. I'm in Facebook groups about Medicare for people who are not in the military, they're not retired military. What a madhouse. It's nuts. Okay, because you buy your Medicare, there's your $205, but Medicare has a 20% copayment. Every time you go in, you got to pay 20%. And we all know how much care costs in America. That 20% is a lot of money.
Can be a lot, yeah.
And some people don't get their care in the States, some retired people, because they can't afford the 20% copayment. So what do? You buy a supplement that pays the 20%.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's great, but neither of those include pharmacy benefits. So you've got to buy a Medicare Part D pharmacy benefits, and now you've got 3 bills every month. This adds to like $400. Now you've got pretty good coverage. Okay. But what is TRICARE for Life? That is the supplement that covers the 20%, and you get it for free. Okay.
And it covers the medicine, the medication.
That's the Part D. It covers the medicine. Now you have a small copayment on the medication. You could buy a supplement for that, but
Sure.
it's not very much. And still you're protected by that catastrophic cap of $3,000. So
Wow.
in the States, when you're on Medicare and TRICARE for Life, the only way you're incurring costs is on medications. That's the only thing that's charging a copayment. So you can do the math. And what I've said, it normally does not make sense for a family to buy a supplement, but if you have predictable, recurring high pharmacy expenses that you know I'm going to hit that $3,000 cap. Okay, well, if you can buy a supplement for $300 that will pay those medication copayments, then it works out. It's worth it. But if you don't have these predictable anticipated costs, you're just getting your random cholesterol pills and, occasional antibiotic or something, it's probably not worth the cost of buying a supplement just to cover your pharmacy costs, because the TRICARE coverage is really good. Like
Right.
I just go to Walgreens, I go to CVS and get my maintenance meds. Every time I pick them up, they're like $1.97 for a
Yeah.
90-day supply.
They're pretty cheap.
And
Even when I decide to go somewhere else, aside from the pharmacies that are covered, I pay what, $6, $7?
yeah. And you always, if you have an MTF nearby, all of us can go there. There's no pushback against any retiree using a pharmacy at an MTF, at least in the States.
Yeah.
Overseas, base access can be a problem sometimes. Like in Aviano, you can't always get on base.
Okay.
But at any rate, if you can get on base, you get the medication for free. I just go to the corner drugstore. Antibiotic is a bit more. I might pay $6, maybe $9, and that's in like a 10-day course of antibiotic. So no, I'm not going to buy a supplement for that. So I tell people in the States, buying a supplement for TRICARE for Life is a waste of money.
Yeah.
And it's essential for those without military affiliation because they're covering that 20% Medicare cost. Now, overseas is different because Medicare doesn't work. TRICARE for Life is your main payer. They do assess the 25% copayment. So if you have a supplement, you need to make sure that it's good internationally. If it's going to work internationally and pick up that
Okay.
25%. Even me, I still wouldn't do it because my normal medical costs, all these copayments, never comes to more than a few $100s a year.
Yeah.
I talked about 2020, I hit my cap, but that was kind of purposeful. I was bundling all this stuff into a single calendar year as a form of experiment. But normally, I don't pay more than a few $100s out of pocket for a family of 3.
And even then, the worst case scenario would be $3,000 catastrophe cap a
That's
year,
the absolute worst.
which doing a quick math here would be about $250 a month if you were to average it out.
Now a supplement is going to cost 60 or 80. I honestly don't know because I've never looked
Yeah.
into it. So they're cheap, but people say, well, it's just in case. So what a lot of people do is at the beginning of the year, they take a cash amount that's equal to their catastrophic cap and they put it in a bank account. And every time they have a copayment, they take it from there. Pay the copayment from that cash amount you've set aside. And at the end of the year, say you started with $4,000 if you're on Select, the end of the year, you still have $3,200 left. You only use $800. So they say, thank goodness I didn't buy a supplement. It would have cost more than $800.
Yeah,
So
right.
what do? January 1st, put a new $800 into that account. You're back up to your full amount to cover the catastrophic costs. The worst case that would ever happen was
Yeah.
you would deplete that account.
What a
And
great idea. I'm
yeah,
going to do that.
yeah, works for a lot of people.
Oh, yeah. That's an amazing idea to manage that.
So
Yeah.
basically self-insure, and then that makes you pay attention because you see at the end of every year how much is left. You're going to realize how
Right.
little you've been paying. People imagine how bad it can be, but the reality usually isn't that. But if you find that you're really dipping deep into that or burning through it all, then boy, next year I need a supplement because
Yeah.
especially you can look ahead and say, okay, these medical expenses aren't going away. And I know I'm going to continue. Then, buy a supplement
And you can
overseas.
assess it properly. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you could give one piece of advice to anyone that's retiring here in the next year or so, like me, what
Mhm.
one piece of advice would you give me?
Well, I'd say focus on the big picture. Healthcare, you're set up for success with TRICARE. You really are. So take it on faith. You're going to figure this stuff out. So you focus on where you're going to live. It's your job hunting skills. Take that TAP class. Like I said, I'm biased because I taught it, and it was structured very differently back at the time. But some of the spouses would come and they would take it and learn your interviewing skills and networking and, job hunting and all that stuff. And that leads to where you're going to live. That's
Right.
kind of my point here. So once you narrow down where you're going to live, then you can focus on your TRICARE options. If you're near a major military area, Prime is available to you in most cases. Some of the Prime doctors may be off base, and which a lot of people
Huh?
like, and some of them are at the MTF. Except the fact that you may end up sliding into TRICARE Select. I would say embrace it. It's not that bad. And people are scared of it because for a 20-year career, they've never done anything like that, having to choose their own doctors.
Yeah.
You won't have to do claims in the States with Select. I've never, well, I won't say never. Rarely have I seen a non-network doctor, and even when I did, they filed the claim. And so I've never done a claim in the States, ever. And I've
Wow.
been retired a long time. But embrace that, and keeping in mind that Medicare works very much like Select.
Okay.
Okay, you choose your own doctor. There's no PCM. Referrals are not handled centrally unless you're in that U.S. Family Health Plan. They'll sort out the referrals. If you go to Medicare Advantage, that's a little bit different. It's too much for this interview, but Medicare Advantage is like a commercial alternative to Medicare, and they manage
Okay.
their own referrals. But the referrals never go back to TRICARE, and they're never going to take weeks and weeks to get through. So if you embrace Select, don't fear it. Almost never. I would say 95% of the time, when the people get used to it, end up happier with Select. They don't yearn to go back to Prime. And
Yeah.
then there's like 5% they were happier with Prime and they'll go back. And that's based on thousands of families that I've seen participating in our group for like the last 6 years. This is not just a random number I'm making up, but I've really observed it that once people make the transition, they're pretty happy with Select.
Well, I'm ready. I'm ready to make the transition. I feel very comfortable now, man. Reading your books and chatting on your Facebook group. That gave me and none the confidence. Like, yeah, we don't need any additional insurance. We're ready to go. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. If you end up settling in Thailand, you're going to have a house there and be very comfortable. You don't even need that air evacuation insurance. This is something that comes up. TRICARE does not cover medical evacuation back to the States for your convenience. They will fly you if you get hurt and there's no hospital nearby that can take care of you. They will transport you, but not because you want to be back home to get better. But if your home is in the Philippines, you don't need that. There are definitely first world 5-star hospitals in the Philippines that just amaze me with their capability, fluent English speaking. So, for expats who actually live abroad, I don't see the need for medical evacuation. Just take care of yourself where you live.
That's a good point. Thank you for bringing that up. Well, John, we got into the point in the podcast where that I like to call rapid fire. Rapid
Mm.
fire are some really short questions, right?
Yeah.
That'll shoot at you very quickly, and hoping to see what first comes out in your
Mm.
mind. What is really John thinking as soon as I ask this question? With that, are you ready for it?
Let's do it. I'll do my best. Yeah.
All right. It sounds good. All right. The easiest country in Asia to use TRICARE.
Mm. I'm biased, but I will say Thailand. It's about a quarter of the cost of the USA. Their English speaking is first rate. The quality of care is phenomenal. So
Amazing.
Thailand, hands down.
I feel comfortable with that. I like it.
Yeah.
How about the hardest country?
Regrettably, I'd have to say Philippines, just because of
Mm.
the special rules that they've put into place that make it very difficult. You do have to look at very much lesser developed countries. If you're in Myanmar and you get hurt, I don't know much about the
Ah,
healthcare system.
yeah.
I will say
Wouldn't
that
want to be there.
TRICARE is not hard to use there. You just turn in your claim, but seeking the quality of care that you want is harder. So in Southeast Asia, a lot of people in the surrounding nations just get themselves to Bangkok and get their care there, which is a great point because some people say, how do I fly back to the States? Well, don't. Just look at
Yeah,
the
you don't
next
have to.
country over and go there instead.
Yeah, they have amazing healthcare. Speaking of high quality medical care, what is the best place in the world for high quality medical health care that is affordable?
Well, I'm going to sound like a broken record. Let me add to it. Thailand is considered a medical tourism destination. You mentioned Bumrungrad Hospital, which is the
Yes.
very premier hospital in Thailand. It's like walking into like Five Diamond Hotel when you are. There's
Yeah.
chandeliers and all this kind of. It's just amazing. And when you walk in, there's a desk for where all the Russian oligarchs go, and they will bring you in, get you admitted with native Russian speaking assistants. There's one where all these oil sheiks go and they're speaking
Yeah,
whatever language.
that's
And a nurse will take you up to, fifth floor clinic where you're going. I mean, even me, they take me. I'm afforded the same treatment as all these
yeah.
people. And these are people that billionaires literally can go anywhere for the care that they want. And they end up at Bumrungrad. That's the most expensive hospital in Thailand, and it costs probably about a third of a normal American hospital.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it is.
Nan's been there before. We did
Yeah,
a couple of physicals there just to get us checked out. That's how I describe it to people. 5-star hotel. Yeah, it top service. And you get to see a real doctor like that.
yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. And even then, I took my daughter for emergency care once. It was like $100. It's
Oh,
like, how do they do this? I just don't
yeah.
understand.
All right. And so, what is one TRICARE myth that really drives you nuts?
The one myth that got me started on all of this was when I was participating in Space A groups. And the myth was you can't use TRICARE outside the United States. And that was like, it just drove me batty, but I had no credibility to fight that. And truthfully, I don't know that I can take credit for that, but I don't see people saying that anymore. Now, the Space A groups, those number in the hundreds of thousands of members. My poor little TRICARE group is like 25,000 after all
25,000
these
is pretty
years.
big.
Yeah, we're doing okay, but I'm reaching, just scratching the surface of the military community. But I don't see people anymore saying you can't use it overseas. That used to be predominant. So I don't know if I've had an influence on the discussion. I would like to think so, but at any
I
rate,
think so.
but let me add one more that, and I opened my book with this, that people think TRICARE is hard to use and they shy away and they buy other commercial coverage because TRICARE is hard. As I say in my book, TRICARE is not hard to use. It's just hard to learn to use because their own educational materials are catastrophic. They don't take you by the hand and guide you through and tell you what to do, and you just end up
They really
feeling
don't.
lost. And that was the purpose of my book, to take that information, organize it, sort it out, and walk you through in plain English so that the learning curve becomes easier. And then at the end, you say, wow, that's really easy. And
Yeah.
that's what I'm shooting for.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's great. Okay. Well, so kind of same along the lines, but
Mm.
where's the country that's the friendliest healthcare system for Americans?
Oh boy, I couldn't speak to that really. I've traveled a bit in Central America and Europe, but I've never used healthcare there. So honestly, I don't want to say Thailand again as a broken
You're
record.
biased.
No, no, I won't say that because there may be others friendlier. They are the land of smiles, right? But
They are.
yeah, I don't know where people get along and what if I do find a lot. You bring your attitude with you when you see that everyone around you is grumpy. Look at yourself,
That
and
is
if
true.
everyone is helpful, again, look at yourself. So it may come from your own attitude.
Okay. Wait, is there a country that surprised you medically?
Well, I said that most countries, they don't rival the cost of the USA, but there are places that do. And this is really from others reporting in our group, Switzerland. And then people have mentioned Hong Kong, that's very expensive. And so certainly there you want to know how to do these things. But I don't know how to say it, but people like say, hey, America has the best healthcare system in the world. Almost everywhere I've been, it certainly rivals what we have.
Not
Uh,
everywhere.
yeah, yeah, not everywhere. Uh, there is good healthcare like all over the world. Systems are very different. What you'll find, like if you give birth in Japan, you'll stay in the hospital like a week. America, they try and get you
Yeah.
out of there in 48 hours and maybe 3 days if you had a cesarean.
Yeah. Good point. None. She was so surprised that she went for a rotator cuff
Mm,
surgery, and she's like, "Well, you'll be heading home, a couple hours after." She said, "Wait a minute, I don't
yeah,
get to stay here for another 2 days." They're like,
yeah,
"No,
yeah,
you're good to go home." She was
yeah.
so surprised.
Hip and knee is like that, and maybe with or without occupational therapy. You'll probably get physical therapy,
Yeah.
but not occupational. But it may be normal in other countries. So it's just a matter of comparing around. But, they'll all be different, but that doesn't mean they're worse or they're better. And so maybe that's the biggest surprise. Everyone has their own different. Like I mentioned, I was in the middle of nowhere in Japan, up in the mountains.
Yeah.
They didn't have such a concept as emergency room. This came up because I was running a camp and someone got hurt at the camp. And so what do? The emergency room comes to you. It's a hospital, or excuse me, an ambulance with doctors. They do the triage on the spot. They get you
Wow.
stabilized, and then they figure out where you need to go from there. Whether it's like emergency treatment or whether it's going to be admission or just kick you out the back of the ambulance.
Wow.
But I was surprised because I wanted to know, where do I go if we have an emergency at the camp? And all the Japanese said, you don't go anywhere. You call 119 and
We
they
come
come
to
to
you.
you. Yeah. So they're different. I don't say it's better. I don't say it's worse, but hey, we embrace these differences, right?
Yeah, definitely. Well,
Mm.
I think I know the answer to this one, and it has nothing to do with TRICARE. But
Yeah.
if you could live anywhere in Thailand, where and why?
Well, I'm going to surprise you on this one.
I said Thailand.
Yeah, I know.
You notice
I'm going
that?
to surprise
I
you.
didn't-
I'm going to say Japan. Um,
Japan. Okay,
yeah,
okay, okay.
because I can live in Thailand. That's not a problem. Easy for me to get a visa. But Japan is very hard, and it's such a
Yeah,
magnificent country. I mean, I'm just absolutely in love with Japan. And I'm not talking healthcare, although that's wonderful, but just everything.
the
I would go back
culture.
if I could. I've been there twice in the Navy. I was based in Yokosuka. As a SOFA contractor, I was down at Iwakuni, which is right by Hiroshima.
Yeah, I've been there. Yeah.
And then as a unaffiliated, like non-SOFA, I was up in what they call the Japanese Alps near Mount Fuji, 2 years of that. I would take any excuse I could find to get back there, but you have to have a Japanese spouse or a student visa or working.
Yeah,
And I don't see any of those three happening right now. It's very hard for me to go back, but
that's
that's
a
what
good
I would
point.
do.
I love Japan. Yeah.
Yeah.
The culture, the food, the
Mm.
people. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of it. Of it.
Yeah.
Um, all right, and the last one here. What is one thing that you wish every retiree knew before they moved overseas?
This will be very self-serving, but you've mentioned it yourself. Put this on your iPhone. You can download either the Kindle ebook from Amazon or go into Apple Books. If you have a Apple device, you open the Apple Books app, search for the title or my last name, and then you have it with you everywhere because we get so many people. It's like the middle of the night, my time, but it's noon for them. And they have this catastrophe going on. And that's the time they're trying to figure out what to do. So this is the type of thing you can just read on the plane as you're flying over or whatever, but get up to speed on these things because the middle of a medical crisis is not the time to figure it out. And the quote that I put in my chapter one, it's like, you, the military member, trying to take care of a crisis in your family, but what if you're incapacitated? Now your wife has to figure this out. It's so much harder for someone when English is not their first language
Yeah,
and they're not used to the culture of the American medical system. Can be very, very difficult for them to navigate and understand these things.
definitely.
So walk your spouse through it as well so that either of you can step up and help out the other in the time of need.
Great advice, like always. For those of you listening, I am going to place links to Amazon and Apple Books to to John's book so that you can get it. I'm a huge fan, like John. I'm a huge fan of the ebook because it also has a feature where you can just search and it'll take you straight to the pages if you really need to reference something quickly. And you get to carry with you anywhere. So I really
I'll
like that
add to
feature.
that, we have a lot of links in the books that link right to the
Yeah.
official government's source. Those links are live in the ebook. So when you click it, it goes to the website of whatever government source is providing that information.
Yeah, you got to have that. So if you're a vet and well overseas or in the U.S., you got to have this and have it electronically at a minimum. If not, have them both. Uh, John, thank you so much for your time. It has been enlightening. Even after all these years in your Facebook group and going through your books, I thought I learned quite a lot, but I learned so much
Mm.
here in the last
Yeah.
hour and a half that we were just talking. So many surprises that I was like, wow, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Well, look, if you're a veteran, active duty, and you really want to take advantage of the best healthcare coverage insurance that's out there for Americans, go ahead and grab your book. And if you have any questions, don't be afraid to put it in the Tracker Around the World Facebook group. People will answer that and give you great advice. John, thank you very much. I really appreciate it, Captain Crap.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
And maybe later in the future, when you come out with another book, come and join us, and we'll show it to everyone else.
Yeah, I'd love that one. Well, good. Best of wishes. And thanks for helping to get the word out for our military community.
All right, John, thank you so much. And for those of you, that's a For Liberty call.